What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to JJD TV. I'm your host, Josh, and we are joined today by a very special guest. Owen, you guys are very familiar with him, but he's coming here today to kind of go over the match preview of the Canada versus Mexico game. So if you guys do like this content, we always appreciate Owen's time. Be sure to drop a like, drop a sub as well. But let's go over to Owen now and see how he's doing today.
Doing really good, Josh. Pleasure as always. Thanks for having me. The last time I was on your channel was previewing the Mexico-Canada game at the Azteca. It ended up in a positive result for you guys, so hopefully this preview brings Mexico good luck this time.
Yeah, it did. I mean, it was a historical point for Canada. I get both of us determined. I mean, it was a well-earned point. It was just one of those matches that Canada came to play. So we're gonna get into the one that we're looking up to for Tuesday, and we're gonna throw it to you first, just to kind of take a look at the matches that were already played. You can discuss a little bit about the Mexico-US match, and then I'll touch a little bit on the Canada-Costa Rica one. So, Owen, I just want your initial thoughts when you guys lost that game 2-0 to US, and how does it kind of change the perception of this match coming up against Canada?
I think it's made this match much more important from a result perspective. I think it was going to be important no matter what. And there was always a possibility of losing in Edmonton, especially given how Canada played Mexico at the Azteca. I think there were real worries about the match in Edmonton, potentially even more than the match in the United States, given the doubts that the Americans had over the first 6 matches of their qualifying campaign. But the loss in Cincinnati, I think, has really thrown the Mexican camp, Mexico's qualifying campaign in general, how you look back on the first 7 games, into turmoil. I think it's given a much more negative spin on everything that's come before. Really good results in the first 6 matches, but the results were better than the performances, certainly. You saw that, for example, at the Azteca when Canada came there. Canada outplayed Mexico. Efficient performances on the road, getting points on the road, but not necessarily playing really well, almost playing within themselves at times. It seemed Mexico struggling to create chances, to finish the chances that they were presented with. Defensively, they weren't tested too much over the first 6 matches, but there were individual errors that were appearing, lapses in concentration. And then against Canada at the Azteca, the midfield issues started to appear as well, playing Guardado and Hector Herrera together. That was an area of strength for Mexico, certainly over the course of the summer. Guardado wasn't there, but playing Hector Herrera and Edson Alvarez together, at least having 2 of those 3 midfield pieces looking very solid and in very good form. And things have really changed. And I think that's the worry for Mexico going into this match. You have a center defensive partnership that's going to be untested, that won't have played together at this level. But also in midfield, there are now real doubts that are starting to appear. That was an area where Mexico lost control, certainly against the United States, definitely in the second half, with McKennie Musa and Adams for the United States really dominating in that sector. Mexico looked a little slow off the pace. Edson Alvarez, I think, was the one player in that zone who came out with some credit. But Luis Romo really had a bad showing. He hasn't been in good form for Cruz Azul in Mexico over the last 6 months this season. He hasn't been great. And then Hector Herrera isn't playing a lot for Atletico Madrid. He's been a substitute. He's played under 400 minutes so far this season. So he's a player who looks off the pace, who looks out of form. And he's a really important player for Mexico in that zone. I don't think there's a natural replacement for him right now, or someone who can come in and do the job as well as he can. So I'd still expect him to start on Tuesday night, but that's suddenly a real problem area for Mexico. And then the front 3 of Tecatito, Raul Jimenez, and Chucky Lozano, on paper, that's a great front 3, but they haven't really been able to mesh together yet. They haven't been able to play effectively together and really score goals, provide assists, get on the score sheet, which is what you'd expect from those 3 players. And against the United States, a similar idea. I think one thing that was interesting in that match from a tactical perspective is Mexico played a little bit more cautious, I think, than some were expecting. They put Luis Romo in midfield, who can play a little bit more defensively. I was thinking maybe they'd go with the Charlie Rodriguez, who had played all of the road matches for Mexico up until that point, as a little bit more expansive, gets on the ball a little bit more. But he didn't start. It was Romo. So a little bit more defensive setup, looking to soak up pressure and hit on the break. That was somewhat successful for Mexico in the first half. They had the best chance of that half. I think the United States controlled territory. They looked a little bit more threatening overall, and they closed the half better. But for the first 15 or 20 minutes, Mexico were able to soak up that pressure pretty well and hit out on the break. They had a couple really good chances to score, forcing Stefan into a couple really good saves. Tecatito Corona also missing a volleyed chance in the 31st minute that he should have done a lot better with. He ends up not connecting well with the volley. So Mexico had chances, but in the second half, they were completely overrun. I think a real weakness I've spoken about here and in other places for Mexico is defending on the flanks. Both right back and left back, but especially left back, are real problem areas for Mexico defensively, and that was seen on Friday night. Anthony Robinson on the left for the United States left back, and then Yedlin, DeAndre Yedlin on the right, who didn't attack as much in the first half, but then the second half was getting forward with regularity. Tim Weah was a constant threat on that flank as well. That's where the first goal came from. So those are real problem areas for Mexico, especially because certainly Jesus Gallardo on the left. He's the player. He's one of the 3 players with more than 2,000 minutes for Mexico in this cycle or under Martina. Not just in this cycle, but under Martina. And Chaco Rodriguez, the right back, is one of the other 3. So those are 2 players who are real stalwarts for Tata, but neither of them have really been too convincing with their performances, and certainly that was underlined again against the United States. So I think Gallardo is going to be there again. We'll have to see. At right back, there is Jorge Sanchez, who could come in, who did well against Canada back in October, and then missed the other 2 October qualifiers through injury. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him come in for Chaka after Chaka's showing on Friday, but at left back, that's going to continue to be a problem area.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on a lot of points with the Mexican side. I mean, especially as we know with the national team, it's frustrating when some of your best players like Hector Herrera are not getting minutes with their respective clubs, because the national team, I mean, whether the player is a little bit better or not, in my opinion, you need players in there who are getting regular minutes, and it could be frustrating because they're just not game sharp, and it's something that could be a big issue there. But I want to throw it over to Tata for you, just because we know the pressure that he was under. He lost 2 finals against the U.S., which is just not a good look. It kind of looked like they were just going to kind of brush it under the bus. World Cup qualifying is the most important thing. It's the big animal. We need to get to the World Cup. He had a decent start, but like you touched on, the 4-2-0 record was, I guess, it looked nice on paper, but like you've talked about, it hasn't always been the best performances. But with losing this one now, 3 on the bounce, 2 finals, and a World Cup qualifier, is Tata under any type of pressure, or do you think they're going to ride him out definitely until the World Cup?
I think as long as Mexico are still on track to qualify for the World Cup, I don't see a coaching change coming. That's now been thrown into a little turmoil. Potentially, if results go against Mexico on Tuesday, they could end up in 4th place heading into the next round of qualifiers at the end of January. So in that playoff spot, a lot would have to go against them. They'd have to lose in Canada. Panama would have to win heavily against El Salvador, probably by more than a goal. They play El Salvador at home. So it's not out of the realm of possibility, but until Mexico's World Cup qualification really is in danger, which at this point they're still in 2nd place, I don't see Tata getting switched out. I think for the powers that be, getting that World Cup qualification, getting the sponsorship deals, getting the economic windfall that comes from World Cup qualification for Mexico, I think is what's most important, and they're still on track to do that despite the loss. But so he's the first coach to ever lose 3 straight to the United States in competitive matches. This is the first time that Mexico have lost 3 straight to the United States since 2007. And they're not playing very well, and they didn't look very good, certainly against the United States. The chances they created, as I mentioned, were on the break, a little bit more defensive, a little bit more reactive than Mexico fans would want their team to play or would be used to seeing. And then the second half, they're completely overrun. So I think that's a real worry. I think Tata's now under real pressure, and going to Canada, I think, is, outside of going to the United States, potentially even more than going to the United States, is one of the most difficult matches that Mexico would have on this octagonal calendar. So definitely not an opportunity to immediately turn the page. Certainly, if you get a positive result in Edmonton, but also you'd probably be hoping, if you're Tata, for a slightly easier match immediately following that loss in Cincinnati.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be quite something else if Mexico walked into a World Cup qualifying window, played 2 matches, and walked away with 0 points. I think that would be cause for concern for anyone. But I mean, I guess going over to a manager who's thriving, and John Herdman, taking a look at our last match against Costa Rica before we head over to to our little preview and starting 11. There were so many different touching points that you can touch on it. The ball, when it every time it hit the turf, just looked like it was going to take a wicked direction in any kind of way. It was freezing, and it's supposed to be even worse going up against Mexico. But Canada did find a way to get the job done. They were the better team throughout the majority of the match. They won 1-0. They played in a 4-4-2, which is very interesting to watching Herman go around with he's played in a 4-2-3-1, which he played against Mexico. He's played in his 3-4-3s, his 3-5-2s, and of course now a 4-4-2. But the interesting part is that he had Alphonso Davies kind of floating around between that left midfield / center forward, same as Tajon Buchanan and say as Liam Miller. We had 3 different wingers playing in a 4-4-2, and we were just kind of taking turns about who was playing up front with Jonathan David. And I personally didn't like that setup. I think it led to some confusion. Alphonso Davies didn't have his best match. It was frustrating for some point, and then a terrible goalkeeping mistake ended up leading the goal, and Jonathan David put it away. But we were the better team. It was just, it didn't seem like an environment that, besides that, it was bumping and it had 48,000 people that should be hosting World Cup qualifying matches, in my opinion. But the interesting part, and we're going to throw it back over to you, Owen, is the fact that the next match coming up on Tuesday against Mexico, the weather is supposed to be terrible. It's supposed to be atrocious. It's going to be very cold. It's going to be very snowy. And I just want to get your perspective. Do you think if it favors anyone, which side? I mean, probably going to say Canada, but I'm curious to see what factors you think are going to come into play when the snow is in there, and how much it might affect the Mexican team.
Right, I think it definitely favors Canada. To what extent, we'll see. But I think certainly it's an advantage for Canada having just played there on that same field a few days earlier. The conditions will be worse, but they have that familiarity. They've now trained on it before and subsequent to that match on Friday. So that's a big advantage. Mexico are going to be arriving in Edmonton tonight. So they're not going to be training on it. They'll probably go in and see the pitch, maybe have a quick training, but the familiarity that Canada have with the field, with the stadium, is going to be superior to a certain extent. So you've got, the majority of Mexico's squad, 19 of the 27 players are based in Liga MX. They're certainly not used to playing in the snow. And then the European players, most of them are not based in leagues where they'd ever have to deal with snow as well. Now, Canada, you've got a player, for example, like Davies, who although, he's not going to be playing in snow all the time at Bayern Munich. Certainly he's had games there in the Bundesliga where you'll be playing in snow. To a lot of the Canadian players, certainly in their youth days, growing up in Canada, that's not going to be something that's unfamiliar. But for example, the ones based in MLS, you're not going to be playing in snow that often. I think it's more of an advantage having just played on that field and being familiar with that, and some already bad conditions on the Friday. Again, as you've said, it's expected to be worse on Tuesday, but already having that familiarity, that recent experience, I think gives Canada a real advantage.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. Every time snow is there, that they say, the Canadians growing up in the snow, it is what it is. But you make great points. I mean, a lot of these players do not play in Canada. They certainly do not play in the snow. It will be different for everyone, but I absolutely agree on the fact that we just played on this pitch, get a little bit more familiar with it. It might benefit Canada just a little bit, if it benefits anyone at all. But we're going to go into the starting 11 now, Owen, and I'll start to give you guys my predicted starting 11 for this match. It's an interesting one. The last time I was talking with you, I said that we are going to play a 3-4-3, is what we were training with the day before. And then John Herdman just, pulled a little rabbit out of the hat, went to a 4-2-3-1, and we had a really, really good game. We played in a 4-4-2 last night. We played in the game against Costa Rica, and I really didn't like that 3-winger system. I just thought it was too much confusion. It didn't play to the strengths of the wingers, which is obviously playing as the wing. So I think he's going to probably go with a 4-2-3-1 again. I think he's going to take that same type of game plan that he implemented against Mexico in the first round and try to do it again. So my predicted starting 11 is Borjan in net. Right back will be Alistair Johnson. Well, actually, and that's the thing. I wanted Alistair Johnson. I forgot, because Richie Larea is in there as well. I'm going to go with Larea. I think it's going to be a very similar lineup. So Alistair Johnson would have been useful if he did a back three, but it's going to be Richie Larea at right back. It's going to be the same center back duo that we had in Victoria and Kamal Miller, with left back Atakubi. I was debating whether to put Alistair Johnson and Larea, but Sam Atakubi, who deserves a big shout out, was excellent. One of the best players on the pitch, if not the best player on the pitch against Costa Rica. So, I mean, you play the hot hand. The two CDMs is going to be Mark Anthony Kaye and Stephen Eustachio. I think Hutch is going to be rested and come off the bench. The The difference is I think Liam Miller's probably going to get brought off, so Tejan Buchanan at right attacking mid, Alphonso Davies at left attacking mid, and I think Jonathan Osorio will be brought into the team. He's a player who played against Mexico, played very well. He'll be that central point for somewhat like a 5-man midfield, and then up front will be Jonathan David as a striker, which leaves Kyle Larin out. I was thinking maybe a 4-4-2 with Kyle Larin, but the blueprint was there. He uses exact system, similar type of players as well to get a decent result at the Aztecas. So I see something of the same, trying to limit the chances that Mexico can have, get the midfield battle and then a hit on the wings, which is what Alphonso Davies and Tejan Buchanan can both do. So I'm thinking something along those lines of a 4-2-3-1. What about you, Owen? What do you think that Mexico's going to do in the starting 11?
I think it will be a 4-3-3. Certainly formation-wise, that's the formation that Tata prefers and basically the only one he's used during his tenure, certainly through all the matches so far in this octagonal. That's been the formation. I'm not expecting that many changes personnel-wise. I think Guillermo Ochoa is definitely still going to be in goal. One of the few players that came out of that match against the United States with some credit. I'd expect to see or hope to see certainly a change at right back. I think Jorge Sanchez could come in for Chaco Rodriguez there. Then in the center back positions, there was a makeshift center back pairing on Friday with Cata Dominguez, the Cruz Azul man, and Johan Vasquez. Given that you had Cesar Montes, who had been a stalwart at right center back throughout the first 6 matches of the octagonal. He injured himself. He picked up a muscle injury against America in a Liga MX match shortly before the start, or in the match before this cycle started. These November matches started. So he was out with injury, and then Nestor Araujo had picked up a red card against El Salvador in the last October qualifier. So he was also out, serving a 1-match suspension on Friday. So he now comes back. So I'd expect Nestor Araujo to start at right center back, and then Johan Vasquez to accompany him at left center back. So Vasquez has been playing well at Genoa, certainly getting a lot of minutes. He moved there this summer. This is only going to be his 4th cap. So unexperienced certainly at senior level. He debuted in World Cup qualifiers on Friday. And Araujo, although I think an improvement over Cata, was at fault, for example, for the goal against Canada, keeping Osorio onside and then getting an unnecessary, to say the least, an unnecessary sending off against El Salvador. So I think that's still a question mark area for Mexico at center back. Then Jesus Gallardo, I think, will start again, despite not playing that well against the United States. I think there really isn't a viable alternative at that position currently in the squad. You have Gerardo Arteaga at our favorite club, Genk, who's been playing really well, but hasn't been getting called up. Refused a call up to the Olympic squad this summer and hasn't been in the picture for the senior national team since then. Who potentially would be a viable alternative to Jesus Gallardo, but he's not there. So I'd expect Gallardo to start again. Then in midfield, Edson Alvarez for sure is going to be there. I think one of the first names on the team sheet, starting and holding midfield. I think Hector Herrera, we touched on before, despite not being in the best form, not playing a lot at Atletico Madrid, I think he's going to start again. I don't think there's really a viable alternative there to Hector Herrera. And then instead of Luis Romo, I wouldn't be surprised, or I would expect to see Charlie Rodriguez come in. As I mentioned before, so he had started the first 3 away matches for Mexico in this octagonal and had performed really well in 2 of those. Wasn't as good against Panama, but he wasn't the only person who struggled in that midfield zone, but was really good against Costa Rica and was really good against El Salvador. So I'd expect him to come in for Romo, try to play a little bit more expansive in that zone, maybe try to keep the ball a little bit more. And then up front, I think Chucky and Raul Jimenez for sure. Tecatito Corona, I also expect to start. Another player similar to Hector Herrera, who really hasn't played that much this season at Porto. He wanted to leave in the summer. And since then, he really hasn't played a lot for Porto this season and really hasn't done very well for Mexico over a period of months now. Was expected to really step up in the Gold Cup with Raul Jimenez out and then Chucky Lozano getting injured in the first match. It never really happened for him. In the World Cup qualifying matches so far, really has flattered to deceive as well. But there's no real alternative to him there either. Alexis Vega, I think if he were healthy and if he were in this squad, potentially could come in and you could move Chucky to the right, play Alexis Vega on the left. But with Vega not being there, I think Tecatito is going to start again and you're going to hope that he can finally deliver.
Yeah, it's a strong starting 11, man. It always is. It's just, yeah, it's those 2 players that I think are so key to this Mexican side, and Tacatito and Herrera, who if they're not fighting or if they're not up, it's a huge weight off that Mexican side because they are so good. They've been so good for so long. And yeah, and a lot of people forget about that. Tacatito, and correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, he was pretty close to a move to Milan. And I think from what I read, he really, really wanted that move. He got kind of stuck at Porto to an extent. And I don't know if his frustration's boiling over, but yeah, I mean, I'm a fan of Alexis Vega. I'd like to see him get a little bit more looks with the Mexican national team, but I guess you got to go with the old guard right now. It's still a very talented front three, and it is a front three that could definitely do damage against this Canadian side. But let's take a little notes for some keys to the matchup for both of ours. Just one or two big keys you think that your side needs to utilize to get success against Canada. What do you think they are?
I think you have to get control of the midfield sector, because that was the real issue with the Azteca in the draw in October. And surprisingly, somewhat Mexico are used to controlling the ball, dominating possession, certainly at home in CONCACAF World Cup qualifiers, and they barely shaded the possession battle against Canada in that match. I think they were overrun at times in that sector. They looked a little slow, a little one pace with Guardado and Hector Herrera together. I don't expect both of those two to start, but then with a player who's a little bit more dynamic, gives you a little bit more physically, has more tools in a Luis Romo instead of Guardado. I think that midfield was still overrun against the United States. So you need to get a little bit more control there, manage to be able to build up play a little bit more if you can. Canada are going to come out and going to be trying to win the game, try to attack. So you need to be able to take the sting out of the match a little bit as well, by being able to keep the ball in midfield. I think that's going to be the real key for Mexico. If they're able to do that, I think they can get a positive result.
For Canada, I have two, and the one is important for me, and it's come out with the same mentality they did at the Azteca. I think something that surprised Mexico is almost not giving them the respect that it's Mexico, it's the Azteca. Come on and kind of relax their way in the game. I thought Canada came out very strong. They came out with the mentality, the confidence that they were going to take the game to Mexico. I don't know with the atmosphere and how the weather is going to be, if they're going to be able to keep up that kind of fight right at the beginning. But I think that's a very important match, just to come at Mexico again, so that Mexico can go back on their back foot and be like, holy crap, like this is happening again. Like we need to. Yeah, just playing a bit of a mind game, because I was really impressed with what Canada did, and it was something I just was not expecting. I really wasn't. And the other big thing for me, and it's the reason I went with the 4-2-3-1 for my predicted starting 11, is to keep utilizing the wings. You've discussed you're the fullbacks being the weak point for Mexico, and I think you're spot on, where the wingers are absolutely the strongest point of this Canadian men's national team. You got pace, and you got two of the most informed players you're going to find for the Canadian men's national team. I'm assuming it's going to be Buchanan and Davies, and then behind them they got a very informed Atakubi. They got Richie Laryea, who likes getting up. Create ways to have these flanks being just peppered with different kinds of runs. Richie Laryea, like I mentioned, is someone who's very good at those overlapping runs, finding space for himself, very good passer of the ball as well, to pick out a pass when he's going for a cross. And then having Jonathan Osorio kind of in that hole, I think, is, if you're looking for an outlet, you can get it to him, and then you can keep finding those runs. But they didn't do that at all against Costa Rica, and I think it was the system in the 4-4-2, the off winger kind of looking a little bit lost from time to time, playing as a striker. I just think the 4-2-3-1 will play to the advantage of the Canadian national team, and hopefully utilize those flanks to be dangerous down the side, because that's where you're going to find Davies at his best. And I'm assuming you're probably going to agree with that in terms of Canada using their wingers to their advantage against your guys' fullbacks.
Right, for sure. I think that's been the big problem for Mexico matchup wise, against Canada. Canada having that skill, that speed, being very strong down both wings, and Mexico not being as good defending down either of those wings. I think that's been a problem for them. Not only, we've talked about the match at the Azteca, but also it's worth remembering the Gold Cup semifinal this summer, when Alphonso Davies wasn't there, when Jonathan David wasn't there. Some important players for Canada were not present in that match. Mexico had a lot more of the starting 11 or the key starters that you'd expect to be playing in Edmonton tomorrow night. And Canada gave them all they could handle. It took a very, very late winner from Hector Herrera to send Mexico through in that match. And they had a lot of trouble defending on the flanks precisely in that match. So I think that's the real concern tactically or matchup wise for Mexico heading into tomorrow night's game.
All right, Owen, I appreciate you coming on here. It's time for one final question. It's the same question you're going to get every single time. It's the prediction. How do you think this game's going to go?
I think I see a draw. I think Mexico are going to respond to the bad result against the United States. I think they have to. They're under real pressure now for the first time in this qualifying cycle. So I think there will be a response. I think they'll try to play a little bit more on the front foot than they did against the United States. I think tactically will be a little bit more aggressive, potentially making that change, as I mentioned, in midfield, bring on a more expansive player in Charlie Rodriguez for Luis Romo. And I think you'll need big performances from these experienced players that we've mentioned, the Hector Herreras of the world, the Tecatito Coronas that have flattered to deceive, that haven't been in good form. But I think Canada present a lot of matchup problems for the United States, principally on the flanks. And you have that player in Alphonso Davies, who you have that trump card, the best player in CONCACAF individually, who can turn a match on its head at any time. And he did that at the Azteca with that assist for Osoria. A player who can also come inside and wreak havoc as well, in addition to being a real danger on the flank anytime he receives possession. So I think that's really important for Canada. Also, that intangible of having that experience on this field in Edmonton, having played there a couple of days ago, having trained there a decent amount over the last week or so, I think gives them a leg up. Also, having a real partisan crowd on your side as well, I think is a big factor. There will be Mexicans there, but there isn't as big a Mexican expat presence in Canada, certainly, as there is in the United States. And so the crowd will be majority Canada. They've already sold, I understand, more tickets than the 40,000, just over 40,000 fans that ended up attending the Costa Rica match. So it's going to be a packed stadium in favor of Canada. I think those factors also give the hosts a real advantage, a real leg up.
Yeah, it's going to be packed and it's going to be cold, but I can see it going one of a couple ways. I mean, you mentioned the trump card in Alphonso Davies, and if we can get the right game plan and Mexico maybe can't deal with just the atmosphere, maybe the cold, or just aren't up to it, I think Canada can actually get away with a win. I said after looking at the weather, a point would do both a decent chunk of success, I guess, if you're going to look at it. So, I mean, I honestly said I could see a 0-0, a boring, gritty 0-0 and crappy weather. I could totally see it going down like that, but I haven't bet against Mexico yet. So I mean, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna say 1-0 Canada. They somehow find a way through, just to show the rude Canadian side of myself. But that's good. But we'll go through that. I think it's gonna be a good matchup nonetheless. I think it can go any way. I could see Mexico pulling it off. I could see a draw. I could see Canada pulling off. It's all gonna depend on a bunch of different factors, but it's gonna be exciting nonetheless. So, Owen, man, I appreciate you once again coming on for another match preview. If you want to, before you head out here, if you want to let everyone know where they can find you on your Twitter, then you can go right ahead.
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter. I'm at 4kicksblog, at FORKicksblog, covering Mexican soccer, El Tri, Liga MX. Also doing a lot of highlight videos, recapping performances individually of Mexican players, also Liga MX players as well.
Awesome. And we'll have his links for all of his socials in the description as well, guys. So we appreciate that. We hope you guys did enjoy this match preview. Hopefully you guys will be joining us for the match watch along and cheering on Canada or Mexico if you want to. Either is, but we appreciate it, guys. Be sure to drop a like on your way out. Drop a sub as well. And we'll see you guys next time. Cheers, friends.